Welcome back to another episode of No Shame with Shane. I'm your host, Shane Fordham. I appreciate you for tuning in. Talking some basketball today. As we know, Team USA men's team won gold just over a week ago against France. Stephen Curry putting on a masterful performance, 24 points, all from the three, 8 for 12 from the field. 4 threes in the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter, just going off in the last at the very end of the game. I mean, it's not hard to see, right? Steph Curry is obviously the greatest point guard in the game, obviously the greatest shooter in the history of the NBA, in the history of mankind on earth. But he's not the greatest point guard. He's not the greatest point guard. And I'm a Steph guy. I love Steph. But he is not the greatest point guard of all time. Steph won't be the greatest point guard of all time until he wins another championship and another finals MVP at least. Like, that's the least he needs to be considered the greatest point guard of all time. I can't sit here and just listen to the Magic Johnson disrespect when having this GOAT conversation in regards to point guards. Like, if we're thinking top 5 players of all time, any top 5 list that, these experts come up with, if you don't include, every list has the same 3 names included in their 5. If you don't have one of these 3 names, if you exclude one of these 3 names, you got to throw the whole list away. The whole list is invalid if you leave off one of these names. It's Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Magic Johnson. Every top 5 list needs those 3 names in order to be valid. Steph Curry is arguably a top 5 player of all time. You could make an argument for it. You can make an argument for Kareem being on the list. Most lists have Kareem on that list. A lot of lists have Shaq on the list. Some people may add Kobe in the mix. There's names that are arguable, but there are also names that are cemented. Like those 3 names that I just mentioned, LeBron, MJ, Magic, those 3 names have to be included no matter who else is on the list. Magic Johnson is probably the only player in NBA history who could be equally as dominant at point guard and as a center or forward. The only player in history that could be equally as dominant. Someone that is a true point guard. I'm not talking about these point forwards. I'm clearly not talking about Bron. I'm not talking about even Ben Simmons back when he was an all-star. I'm talking about a true point guard. He is the only true point guard in history that could be as equally dominant at center or forward just as he was at point guard. He played a full game at center in the finals against the Sixers in an elimination game. Put up 42, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists. What other true point guard in the history of the NBA can do that? Who else is doing that? There are guys that could possibly do it, maybe have the potential, but there's no one else in the history of the game who could do something like that, or who has in fact done something like that. Magic, if we're looking at just even statistically, looking at Magic Johnson and Steph Curry compared side by side, Magic has more rings, he has more MVPs, he has more finals MVPs, he's been the assist leader of the league more times. He's had more all-star appearances, and he's been a steals leader more times. Magic Johnson, looking at the specific stats, Magic Johnson has 5 rings to Steph's 4. He has 3 MVPs to Steph's 2. He has 3 finals MVPs to Steph's 1. He has 12 all-star appearances to Steph's 10. He has 9 first-team all-selections to Steph's 4. Magic was the assist leader 4 times in the league to Steph's 0, and Magic was the steals leader twice in the league to Steph's 1. Magic also averaged more rebounds, more steals, more blocks, and had a higher field goal percentage than Steph. If you're looking at Steph and Magic, the only thing that Steph really does better than what Magic was able to do in his day was shoot the basketball. This is the only thing. That's the only thing Steph does better than Magic Johnson was than prime MJ Magic than prime Magic. Now, I do acknowledge the fact that if there is a stat that can kind of make up for everything else, right, in terms of increasing the longevity of a player's career, allowing them to play in the league longer, it is the jumper. And in terms of dominance, there's no question that Steph and Magic are on the same level in terms of dominance. Like, Steph is able to take over a game whenever he wants, just like Magic was able to in his prime. But if we're talking about legacy and capability, Magic takes the cake. Magic is the greatest point guard of all time. He does everything better than Steph. He was able to do everything better than Steph except shoot the basketball. He was a better all-around player than Steph is now. He was one of the first positionless players to play the game of basketball. A guy you could put in any position and still give you the same output. It's hard to call Steph the greatest point guard of all time when Magic clearly has the numbers. Like, I can't sit here and label Steph the greatest point guard of all time and ignore everything that Magic has done. Like, and I know you guys may say, oh, well, Magic had Kareem. Kareem and the Lakers weren't winning championships like that before Magic went to the team. Like, before Magic was there, the Lakers are really a modern day Sixers team. They were a top team in the regular season, top 3, top 2 in their conference in the league, but they couldn't get over the hump. They couldn't win when it mattered the most. When Magic gets there, that all changes. The Lakers are now the Showtime Lakers. They're the trademark basketball team, face of the NBA, along with the Celtics. It was the Lakers league. That doesn't happen without Magic Johnson. That was Magic Johnson's legacy. Now we're looking at Steph. I think what hurts Steph's legacy in this regard, in this conversation of GOAT, is the fact that KD took 2 finals MVPs away from Steph. Like, yes, Steph was a winner before KD got there. But playing with KD, it took a little weight away from Steph's legacy in terms of the fact that they were co-pilots. Like, KD honestly took more of an offensive role than Steph did those 2 championship years. I mean, KD was the finals MVP. Steph really deserves 2 finals MVPs instead of 1. You know, that year Iguodala got it for his defensive performance against Bron. But I mean, even to me, that still didn't outweigh what Steph did for that team in 2015. But just looking at it on paper, KD took 2 finals MVPs away from Steph. So I think that hurts his legacy a bit, just in terms of how it appears to decrease his significance on that squad. Even though we know those MVPs could have gone to Steph. But the fact that KD snagged him, I think, is what hurts his legacy only in comparison to Magic in this debate. So looking at Magic, it's hard to see. It's hard not to give him the label of point guard. I mean, he was a better handler, a better ball handler. He was a better rebounder. He was a better facilitator. He was a better floor general. He did everything better than Steph Curry as opposed to shooting the basketball, especially on defense. So it's hard for me to give him that. It's hard for me to give Steph the label of greatest of all time right now, even though I will acknowledge the fact that it is Stephen Curry's mantle to gain before his career is over. Obviously, Stephen Curry, I think, will, before his career is up, will take that mantle for himself, where it's just him alone as the greatest point guard of all time before it's time for him to retire. But right now, you can't say Steph is the greatest point guard of all time. But I will say, even though Magic is the greatest point guard of all time, just in terms of the intangibles, the skills, the tendencies, the capabilities, I would say if I were building an all-time team, if I'm building an all-time team with Bron, with MJ, with Shaq, KD, if I'm putting Tim Duncan in there at the 4, or if I'm building an all-time great squad, I would probably put Steph Curry in that all-time squad before Magic, only because of his ability to stretch the floor. Like, Steph's ability to stretch the floor makes a team that much more dangerous. Like, Magic is able to make his teammates better, but Steph is able to make the team more dangerous in a different way, because now you can't not pay. I mean, you have to guard Stephen Curry as soon as he steps across the half court line. So that's something that's kind of where it gets hard, because it's a different type of threat, where now that Steph is on the floor, you have to kind of gravitate towards him because he can pull up from anywhere. And that's why shooting is so important and can kind of make up for everything else. But it's still a fact that Magic was still an all-around better basketball player on both defense and offense than Steph is now. So I had to step in, because I've been hearing so many takes on, especially after this Olympic run, and how after, Steph's berserk game, especially that last shot, hitting that shot over with 2 defenders in his place. I mean, Steph Curry is the only player in the history of the game that could take a contested shot with 2 players in his face while both KD and LeBron are wide open on the wing. That's the only player that could take that shot and sink it. That's the only player. So, I understand the argument. I mean, it was an argument before this year, before this Olympics. But I can't say that Steph is, without a doubt, inarguably the greatest point guard of all time, and just disrespect and neglect everything else that Magic has done in his career, what he brought to the game of basketball, how he changed the point guard position and revolutionized the game. I just can't do that. But that's all for this edition of No Shame with Shane. If you haven't already, be sure to support us on all social media platforms with a follow, like, and subscribe. And I will be back later this week, next time, with more shameless things.